The moment my boss called me into his office, I felt my stomach twist. You know that sinking feeling when you already know something bad is about to happen, but you still hope you're wrong. That was me. I had been working in that company for nearly 6 years, and in those 6 years I had poured my soul into it. I had stayed late, skipped vacations, and even covered for other people when they messed up. So when I saw that cold look in Mr. Daniel's eyes, I already knew something was off. He motioned for me to sit down, and the silence that followed was louder than any words. Then he said it, the words that shattered everything I had built. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but we're letting you go." Just like that. No warning, no explanation, just a sentence that felt like a slap. My mind went blank. My lips trembled, and before I could stop myself, I asked, "What? Why? I've done everything this company ever asked of me." He sighed, acting like he was burdened by my reaction, and said something about budget cuts and restructuring, but his eyes told a different story. I could feel it deep down. This wasn't about money or the company. This was personal. You ever get that gut feeling that someone is lying straight to your face? That's exactly what I felt in that moment. I wanted to scream to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there, trying to hold back tears while he handed me a termination letter like it was just another piece of paper. He said, "We'll give you 2 weeks severance. HR will handle the rest." I took the paper, stood up, and walked out with my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Everyone in the office stared as I walked past. Some looked away, pretending they didn't see, while others whispered. My so-called coworkers, the same people who smiled at me every morning, suddenly avoided eye contact. It was humiliating. I went home that day completely crushed. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sat there staring at the letter over and over, wondering how I went from being one of the most loyal employees to being disposable overnight. But the worst part wasn't losing my job. It was knowing that something about the whole thing didn't make sense. The next morning, I decided to go back and collect my personal stuff. I kept my head low, walked straight to my desk, and tried to ignore the whispers. That's when one of my coworkers, Amanda, pulled me aside. She looked nervous, glancing around before whispering, "Sarah, you didn't hear this from me, but Mr. Daniels replaced you with someone already." My heart dropped. "What already?" She nodded. "Her name's Chloe. She started yesterday." I felt my knees weaken. Yesterday. The same day I got fired, that meant my termination had been planned all along. Amanda leaned closer and whispered, "Rumor is she's his girlfriend." That was the moment everything clicked. The sudden firing, the fake budget cuts, the cold look in his eyes, all of it made sense. He didn't fire me because of performance or budget. He fired me to make room for his affair. I was furious. I spent 6 years building his department from scratch, and he threw me out like trash just to bring in some woman he was sleeping with. That's when something inside me changed. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to be the victim. If he wanted a war, he'd get one. I started gathering everything: old emails, messages, performance reports, project records, anything that proved how valuable I'd been to that company. And in the process, I found something interesting. See, I used to handle confidential project budgets and transactions. While digging through my archived files, I found several inconsistencies, payments that didn't match, invoices signed off by Mr. Daniels that went to consulting companies. That didn't exist. I double-checked every detail, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. My boss had been embezzling money from company funds, small amounts at a time hidden in project costs, adding up to hundreds of thousands over the years. I couldn't believe it. The same man who told me I wasn't valuable enough to keep had been stealing from the company right under their noses. For a moment I hesitated. I could have walked away, found another job, and moved on. But then I remembered the humiliation, the whispers, the way he smirked when I walked out of his office. No, I wasn't going to let him win. For the next few days I worked quietly. I created backups of every document I found. I even found emails between him and Chloe. Not only were they romantically involved, but he was sending her company funds labeled as training expenses. I had enough evidence to burn his entire career to the ground, but I didn't rush. I wanted to do it right. So I reached out to someone I trusted, a friend named Eric, who worked in the company's internal audit department. Eric had always been kind to me, and I knew he had his doubts about Mr. Daniels too. When I showed him what I'd found, his jaw dropped. "Sarah," he said, "this could get him arrested." That's when I told him my plan. I wasn't just going to expose him quietly. I was going to make sure everyone saw who he really was. A week later, the company held its quarterly meeting, a big event where all department heads and employees gathered to discuss performance and plans. Even though I was no longer employed, I knew they wouldn't expect me to show up. But I had a card. My company ID still worked because HR hadn't officially deactivated it yet. I showed up, dressed sharply, heart pounding, and slipped into the back of the conference room unnoticed. Mr. Daniels stood at the front, smiling confidently as he talked about integrity and teamwork. The irony made me want to laugh. I waited until he started bragging about the company's financial transparency. That's when I stood up. Everyone turned. The room went silent. "Mr. Daniels," I said loudly, "you might want to explain these numbers." I walked up and connected my laptop to the projector before anyone could stop me. Suddenly, the screen filled with spreadsheets, emails, and bank transfers, all showing his fraud, the fake companies, and the personal payments to Chloe. Gasps echoed around the room. Mr. Daniels' face turned pale. He tried to stop me, but Eric, who was in on it, stood up and said, "She's right. We've verified all of this." For a moment, time froze. Then chaos erupted. People whispered, some shouted, and Mr. Daniels stammered, "This is a misunderstanding," but it was too late. The evidence was undeniable. The CEO, who had been sitting in the front row, stood up and demanded security to escort him out. I watched as the man who once humiliated me was dragged out of the room, face red with shame, while his precious Chloe stood there frozen, realizing her fancy new position was about to vanish too. And me, I just stood there, calm and collected, for the first time in weeks. The CEO turned to me afterward and said, "Sarah, thank you. You might have just saved this company." They immediately launched a full internal investigation, and within days, Mr. Daniels was fired permanently and reported to the authorities. Turns out he had stolen nearly $400 over 5 years. Chloe disappeared overnight. No one ever saw her again. But the story didn't end there. A few weeks later, I got a call from HR. They offered me my job back, and not just my old position, but a promotion. I was hesitant at first. After everything, did I really want to go back? But the CEO personally called and said, "We need people like you, people who do the right thing, even when it's hard." So I accepted. When I returned, the atmosphere was completely different. People looked at me with respect, even admiration. Amanda hugged me and whispered, "You're a legend, Sarah." I laughed, but deep down it felt surreal. The same place that once broke me was now celebrating me, and yet part of me couldn't help but wonder how many others had been treated the way I was, fired for someone else's selfish gain. It made me realize that sometimes you have to lose everything to truly see people's true colors. So that's the situation I was in, fired unfairly, humiliated, and betrayed. Before I tell you how things turned out after that, I want you to pause and think. If you were in my place, would you have done what I did? Would you have exposed him publicly, or just walked away quietly? I genuinely want to know, because at that moment, standing there in front of everyone, I had a choice to stay silent or to fight back. After that big confrontation, the days that followed were chaotic. The company's name hit the local business news after the investigation results went public. I tried to keep a low profile, but reporters reached out to me for statements. I didn't say much. I wasn't looking for fame or revenge anymore. I just wanted peace. Mr. Daniels, on the other hand, faced the full force of the law. Turns out this wasn't his first time bending financial rules. There were old complaints from his previous job too. His career was over, and honestly, I didn't feel sorry for him. He made his choices, and he paid the price. The company's morale improved drastically after his exit. People were happier, more open, and actually respected one another. It was strange seeing how one toxic person could poison an entire environment. As for me, I started rebuilding my life. My promotion came with a bigger office, a small team under me, and a salary that made all those sleepless nights worth it. But the best part wasn't the title or the paycheck. It was the peace of knowing that I stood up for myself. Every time I walked past Mr. Daniel's old office, now occupied by someone else, I felt this quiet satisfaction. He thought firing me would erase me, but instead it made me stronger. People often say karma takes time, but in my case, it didn't take long at all. Karma walked right through those office doors the moment he underestimated me. Months later, I ran into Chloe by chance. I was at a cafe downtown when she walked in. She looked completely different, tired, worn out, like life had caught up with her. When she saw me, her eyes widened. For a second, I thought she'd turn around and leave, but she walked up and said, "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't expect that." She said she had no idea what she was getting into, that he'd promised her love, power, a career, but he'd used her too. She said she lost everything after the scandal, even her family's trust. I listened quietly, then simply said, "We all make choices, Chloe. I made mine, you made yours." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. And in that moment, I realized that forgiveness doesn't always mean forgetting. It just means letting go of the anger so it doesn't control you anymore. Looking back now, I don't regret a single thing. Losing that job was the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me resilience, courage, and the value of standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Life has a strange way of testing us. Sometimes what feels like the end is just the beginning of something better. I rebuilt my confidence, my career, and even started mentoring younger women in the company to help them navigate the corporate world. I tell them, don't ever let anyone make you feel replaceable. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's opinion. So, was I wrong for what I did? I don't think so. I didn't just fight for myself. I exposed a system that was broken, and sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything. If you ask me now whether I'd do it again, my answer would be yes, 1,000 times yes, because at the end of the day, integrity matters more than approval. If you were on my side through this story, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my place? Would you have stayed quiet, or would you have stood up like I did? I'll be reading all your comments. Thanks for listening to my story. I'll see you all in the next one.